welcome back to our show Dreams, Passion and Your Hong Kong Story. Today we have with us a very dynamic and a versatile architect, someone who's highly regarded in Hong Kong for his humanistic style of design that he's adopted. Let's meet Bryant Lu, Vice Chairman, Ronald Lu and Partners. Hello Bryant and
Hi.
welcome to our show.
How are you?
So Bryant is the Vice Chairman of Ronald Lu and Partners. Ronald Lu and Partners is a very prominent architectural and interior design firm of Hong Kong. Bryant is the second generation architect. After graduating from Cornell in 2000, Bryant joined his family architectural practice, and under his vision and dynamism, Ronald Lu and Partners grew from a 100-staff firm with one office to a 600-staff architectural practice spanning 5 offices in China and Hong Kong. Besides being a very successful business person, Bryant is a very versatile personality, a very fitness enthusiast. He's a triathlete, he's a doting dad of 2 lovely boys. Let's talk to Bryant and find out how Hong Kong has played a role in his life. So Bryant, tell us, you do so much. You are an amazing business person and you're a triathlete. We often see you biking and you are so involved with the Hong Kong charity scene, so involved with the Hong Kong cultural life, and you are a very hands-on dad. What is the secret of your never-ending energy?
Sleep.
Really?
and passion, I think. When you're excited on something that has a purpose and it excites me, it energizes me, and lately I've learned that sleep is equally important. So balancing everything, I think it's a challenge, but it's rewarding.
Did you decide to become an architect very early on in your life, and was coming from an architectural background a reason for joining, and why?
Well, it's my father went into architecture for his university, and then he came back and opened his own office in Hong Kong. And being an architect back then, the firm was very small. So in the morning, he would go and have meetings with clients, and then at nighttime, he would come home and start drawing. In the old days, it's really big drawing desk, and all the equipments are there, the scale rules. So I grew up in that environment, and when I was young, naturally, you say, "Oh, Daddy, what are you doing?" So he would put me on his lap and explain to me the drawing. So this is the door on the plan, and this is the window. So very early on, I got educated in that language. And a small story, it's when I was in kindergarten, I think 3rd grade, the teacher asked us to draw a picture of our room. So everybody draw, colors and beautiful, and I took out a black crayon and started drawing. When I finished, the teacher was in shock. He said, "What is this?" So she called up my mother and said, "Mrs. Lu, please come and pick up your son." And my mother showed up and she explained today's sort of assignment and showed them my drawing. And my mom laughed. Basically, I drew the floor plan of my room.
Really?
Yeah, so at a very young age, I learned how to visualize space in 2-dimensional, but I think it's also so in tune of what your dad is doing, and you naturally, dad is always your hero, right? So that sort of, I think, he planted his seeds fairly early without knowing, and I slowly grew loving the built environment, building spaces, and you're more sensitive to the design aspects of it and how building and spaces impact people. So when I got older, and I decided to pursue that as my profession and career.
So tell me, you joined your family business at a very young age, and then you grew it very rapidly in China. So what were some of the challenges that you faced joining at such a young age and growing the business so rapidly?
Well, after graduation, I worked in New York for 2 years, and then right around 2000, I came back. And back then, I think, I wanted to be in Asia because I believe that's where the future is going to be. And furthermore, what drives me is when I was studying in the US, I saw a lot of great firms, and they do very well, and they hire great talent, a lot of them from Cornell. And I was looking at my classmates, and they're good, but you know, maybe they can be, everyone should be just as good. So anyway, so afterwards, when I came back, I thought, well, how come there are no well-known practice in Asia, and particularly from Hong Kong? And I want to change that. And I believe from 2000 onwards, the future, the new world stage will be China and this whole region. So I came back and wanted to sort of contribute back to Hong Kong and maybe make a name for the firm. So started on that journey, and then started to go to China and build the business up. And that was quite challenging. When I went there, a lot of our competitors told us that, oh, you're late. In fact, it's true. Back then, a lot of our competitors went in the early 90s.
I see.
Our firm never did. So when 2000 come along, Asian financial crisis, we're kind of forced to have to look beyond Hong Kong. And so we gather up and ask, oh, let's go to China. Sure. Who's going to go? None of the directors put their hands up. So I said, fine, I'll go. So 20-something started then going to China. And the first thing I did was, back then they still have a lot of Canton Fair, a lot of different industry fairs. So I signed up the booth.
Yes.
Designed the booth myself, fly up there, and stand there from 8 till 4 days a week, business cards, explaining different projects and hopefully getting some business. And it's very humbling from the beginning, because nobody knows who you are, and you started doing that. A lot of our Hong Kong clients, they have projects in China, but they said, fine, we'll give you a project in Hong Kong, but you guys have no experience in China. So we're not going to give it to you until you build some experience. So that's how the journey started. And looking back, there's a lot of lessons, but humbling lessons. I think one of the earliest lessons that I had was going there. Often you thought, okay, I'm educated in the U.S., I grew up in Hong Kong, I'm more sophisticated, and you go into the market thinking that what you think is good and right for them, it's the best. Very quickly you learn that's not the case. I think the biggest lesson I learned from there was humility. Trying to understand why things happen in a certain way. Mm-hmm. Only when you realize that, then you can build upon that knowledge. And then having the humility to understanding we are always standing on shoulders of giants that have gone before you. And having that respect, I think that enables you to learn quicker and then find solutions that are culturally fitting,
right,
and also solving some of their problems. Mm-hmm. It's not just enforcing your ideals on them, but really understanding them and then finding a solution or a design that would benefit everybody and make the society better. I think that's how we learn. The first few years was tough, but once we understand that, things grew quite quickly and we were able to get some nice projects.
So was being based in Hong Kong an advantage when you decided to scale to China?
Having all the knowledge, and the firm by then is already 30-odd years old, so we have enough experience and knowledge and professional sort of approaches and knowing what's good and bad. Mm-hmm. I think all those is important, and I think Hong Kong also prepared me to be trilingual, Cantonese, Mandarin, and English, and having a global perspective, but understanding the Chinese culture, the heritage.
Right.
I think having that combination helped me to navigate what China has to offer. Not only the heritage or the history, but adding on new layer of more modernized approach, right, thinking and the way of living, the new lifestyle, the new way to engage society and the young people and to build a better community. So all those things we have learned in Hong Kong and lessons we have learned in Hong Kong, mistakes that we have made here, that we can use that experience and do a better job in China. And that has benefited us quite a lot.
How do you differentiate your architectural practice with the other architectural practices of Hong Kong?
I think our firm, on a few fronts, I think we always interested in the humanity side of design. Mm-hmm. The aesthetic is very important. You have to look pretty, you have to look good, but there's a whole dimension of how the user engages the space, how the developer, when they invest in building that, makes sure that it's of good performance. Mm-hmm. And that passion leads to us to commit very early on sustainability. We started the journey very early in 2006 when our first approach to sustainability design wasn't telling the client what we can do, but asking the cleaning ladies to come in the morning and note down who didn't switch off the lights, their computer, and the air conditioning, and so on and so forth. Because we believe that change will only happen when you change your own behavior.
Right.
And by doing that, then everybody realize, oh, we are very serious about sustainability, not just lip service, but we have to practice it. It's a lifestyle change, it's a commitment. So by doing that, we're starting doing lectures, we're offering trainings, and giving a lot of training for our colleagues to take exams that they can be qualified as a sustainability designer. And only through education that they learn what is sustainability. And by spending almost 18 months preparing the foundation that everybody start to increase their knowledge, then we can start telling people what we can do with their project to be more sustainable. And that, luckily, also the timing, I think we're quite good, that the whole world start to realize we can't do, the carbon footprint it's really getting big, the global warming is happening, we need to do something, and there's an urgency to that. So we managed to be good timing, but our preparation work paid off. So
the many buildings that you have built in Hong Kong, how have you managed to put that orientation towards being environment friendly and sustainability into them?
Well, very often people think when they talk about sustainable design, they always think of the bells and whistles. Right? Oh, can we do a photovoltaic cells or different technology? But I think that comes later. What we want to advocate is how do you maximize something that is free?
Yes.
Like shading, orientation of the building. When you design it right, let's just say if you have a big window facing west, that room is going to get really hot. So can you maybe design it to be not so west facing? But if that happened to have a beautiful waterfront, then of course you want that view. Then we can think about technology, whether we can put shading devices, we can have better performing glass that lets in daylight but not the heat. That come later, but we always say maximizing the what's free. So passive design. If you get the ventilation right, you get the shading right, orientation right, then the whole building would use less energy to be comfortable. Then that's a great start.
So tell us about a failure that helped you emerge stronger.
Oh, so many. I think even going to China in the beginning, not knowing how to engage with the client, getting cheated early on, so not getting paid. So you learn through that. Another story, I started very early on. I know that the company needs to have some sort of retreat to align our strategic movement. I hire a consultant, but that consultant didn't really understand our firm.
I see.
He want to push his idea to us, which created a lot of chaos. So that retreat was an utter failure. But I learned that, I think I could have say, retreat is no good, let's not do it. But what I've learned from that experience is, maybe I shouldn't get someone who doesn't understand to run the retreat, but what I've learned, it was a great communication platform. After that retreat, everybody speaks the same lingual language terminology, so I can see the benefit of it. But it was run incorrectly. So the following year, I actually took up to run that retreat. And that started the process of transforming the company and growing the company. But that one, I think my dad was like, you spent so much money getting someone in and didn't work. So I got a lot of heat for that. But I always say every failure is an opportunity to learn. If you own that failure and you learn from it, then it becomes invaluable investment. So that's how I treat failure. That's why I always love to try new things. And if it fails, then you learn something from it, then you can be a better person, a better experience. And those experiences can be shared, not just from business, but personal experience with your friends, with children. It's always great to share stories. And only when you expose yourself to failure, then you have stories.
Absolutely.
Right? And stories are essential on how we grow and learn. So That's how I see it.
So how has Hong Kong been as a base for your business?
I think Hong Kong is phenomenal. I love this city. For us as architects, Hong Kong is unique because it's super high density and has an incredible infrastructure. How the MTR, how it moves so many people every day. I can't imagine the city function without the MTR system. So we are able to design high density environments that are healthy, that are very efficient, and actually quite decent. I often get into discussion with some of my friends in overseas, and they say, oh, super tall buildings are no good, it's cold, it doesn't engage any community. We much prefer the white picket fence houses. I was like, really? When was the last time you really talked to your neighbor? Yeah, I talked to him a month ago. So not really, but when you live in an apartment building, for me, you know, I take the lift, go down, and I see my neighbors. And you say hi every morning, and I know quite a few of my neighbors, and we become friends. The kids become friends. You actually have a pretty tight, close community when it's vertically stacked up. So I would argue that it's not so much how far and how big of a space you have, it's how engaging that you can create the space and create a sense of community.
Yes.
A lot of Hong Kong development, they have clubhouses, and that become a little community center where families from different apartment blocks can meet and greet. Furthermore, our MTR system allow us to have very efficient public transport, and that's super low carbon footprint. In fact, I believe Hong Kong has the lowest carbon footprint in the world on transportation. A lot of people don't own cars. We don't have to own cars because the public system is so good with taxi, buses, trains, underground, and even Uber. Who needs a car?
Right.
So we have a pretty green, sustainable sort of mobility platform here.
So amongst all the projects that your company has done for Hong Kong, which one of it is your favorite? I know you have done so many.
That's so hard to say because...
What about the new...
C2 Center?
Yes,
yeah, that one is certainly one of our...
that's gorgeous.
Yeah, it's a beautiful building. It really is.
How long did it take to get built?
The construction took about 4 years. The whole process about just over 5 years. We were part of... We joint venture with another Canadian Chinese architect, and together we entered the design competition, and there were 6 firms, all big boys, global, you know, star architects, and we're so happy that our design won the competition. Yeah. I think one of the winning feature of the design is that we created a very beautiful public space at the bottom, at the entry plaza, and we lifted the theater up on the top floor, and that created that beautiful space that is naturally ventilated and is covered. And Hong Kong, I think apart from the HSBC headquarters, there are no other covered public space. I think we should advocate for more because Hong Kong weather, you know, summer is pretty hot.
Yes.
So once you put shading is free, and natural ventilation, the space actually is quite nice, even in summertime. So I think we need more of those spaces. But that project was something we're very proud of, a 1,000-seat theater that promotes Chinese opera. And it's one of the UNESCO heritage performances. And we want to promote that art form and create a legacy, not just for the existing audience, but develop new audiences, a new way to perform that art form. So yeah, very proud, very happy. And then we have lately finished the Victoria Dockside project, which is a very large-scale development as well. So, you know, we have done quite a few.
So you're very active in the Hong Kong cultural scene. Tell us something about your involvement there.
Well, I'm involved with the Hong Kong Arts Centre, which is a small NGO that we've been promoting arts for the last 50 years in Hong Kong. In fact, a lot of people of my generation, when I was a kid, I go to the Arts Centre to learn music or drawing or painting, and we continue to do that role throughout Hong Kong. We have an art school that teaches the art program. The Arts Centre hosts exhibition and performances, movie. So we've done quite a lot in Hong Kong as really the non-profit organization that have been promoting arts across different mediums and across different sort of social classes. So it's,
How wonderful.
yeah, it's a great little...
Your humanistic side gets reflected there.
I think it's important. I think arts and sports are very important part of any society because not everybody academically can do well, become lawyers, doctors, or bankers, or architects. But then sports and these art performances brings in different aspects of life and also create a lot of employment and engagement with people that are just not so good at the books. But it can be a great way to export to the world that, you know, that art form, that performance. You have stage designer, you have performer, you have script writers. So there's a whole other part of the society that they can offer. Really, I think it's important to create a more balanced and happier society.
So what advice would you give to a young 22-year-old looking to become an architect?
I think it's important to be sensitive with the environment and understand people, because people's behavior drives the design ultimately, right?
Yeah.
So when you understand that, then you understand the local culture, the climate is very important, and then have a passion for the arts that also helps to inspire you to do beautiful things. But I think having an interest on the fabric of how the city is created and then the people, how the two relate. And often when you understand these two aspects, then you can create some pretty amazing spaces and experiences for the city.
So what's next for Bryant? Where do you see yourself in the next 5 to 10 years?
I think technology is a big thing right now. I'm seeing that technology is changing how we behave, how we live, as simple as how we shop.
Yes.
Right, nowadays, most of our shopping is online, right? Then, for instance, shopping mall, what it should be, what's the future of shopping? And that's shifting and changing.
Right.
So I'm seeing there's a lot of changes going to take place. And also the social engagement, how people want to live is different.
Right.
How community gets together is different. How people learn is different. Particularly what we're going through in the world right now. Everybody is doing Zoom lessons or e-learning.
Oh, yes.
So the question of how do we learn? How do children learn? What should the school now be designed that cater for not only these events, but I think to ask a fundamental question, how a classroom should be.
Right.
So we have done a few schools in Hong Kong that are super flexible. We don't have a fixed classroom. The room can be reconfigured quite quickly because the subject matter, the content is changed quite quickly, and the engagement with the student is different.
I see.
So I think it's a new horizon, how we live, work, entertain, learn, will be all different. So I think it's a huge opportunity for us as architects, as designers, to rethink how the future should be, and new city, how it should be. So it's exciting time.
How interesting, Bryant.
Yeah.
All right, Bryant, are you ready for a rapid fire question round?
Absolutely, shoot away.
Let's getting to know Bryant's Hong Kong story in a bit more fun way. All right, Bryant's favorite casual and formal dining place in Hong Kong?
There are so many. Flower Drum nearby here, Samsung, The Pond, Louis.
So these are for your formal?
Louis is formal, Belong is formal, and then casual from your cha chan tang, you know, the local. Love that. And then right near my office, Samsung for Thai, Flower Drum for Chinese food, and then I go to The Pond quite a bit as well.
So your favorite way to hang loose with friends in Hong Kong?
The Pulse down in Repulse Bay.
Really?
That seems to be a good hangout on the beach, and I'm quite outdoorsy, so being in promenade, being on the outdoor, grab a drink, go to the beach, or just hang out there. I enjoy
your favorite hobby?
Oh gosh, photography, running, swimming, biking.
3 words that describe Bryant's Hong Kong life.
Family, passion, and density.
Density? What does that mean?
That means you can do a lot of things in a very short time with a very short distance.
Okay.
And I love this vibrancy of Hong Kong when things have close proximity, but yet you have enough public space and things that you can move around, but being close with everyone and 15-minute drive, you get to get everything done. I think that's unique for Hong Kong.
Okay, and your favorite solitary activity?
Cycling or running, I think these two are always...
Okay. What are you most proud of as a Hong Konger?
Being multicultural, understanding East and West, and understanding the diversity that exists between different cultures. I think being in Hong Kong, you really get to experience from not just the Chinese or the Western, there's the Indian pocket, there's all these other minority pockets that exist in Hong Kong that very often don't get touched upon, but that's the gem, I think. Just everybody enjoying the city, working together and bringing things that food that are so multiculturally diverse. You go to a local cha-chan hang, you have East and West immediately. Right. So I think that diversity is unique to Hong Kong.
Yeah, as a business leader, what would you tell the global business leaders and policymakers? Why should they engage with Hong Kong?
I think Hong Kong is the best foundation to launch any business globally. We have common law, we have a very transparent legal and accounting system, we have great financial capital system, and apart from that, we're close proximity to the biggest market, China, India, and then most importantly, where else can you go that you have the city, the beaches, and the mountains all within 15 minutes of your radius, and the weather here is great. You don't have to shovel snow.
Right.
And I think it's the best of everything. It's proximity. We have beautiful harbor. You want to go hiking, it's 15 minutes away. You want to go swimming, and the beach is 15 minutes away. And you have access to the world's best talents, great sort of civic society, and it's a safe place.
Well, thank you so much, Bryant,
you.
for coming to our show, and we wish you all the very best in all your future endeavors.
Thank you so much, Shaya.
Stay tuned for our next episode, where we bring you yet another fascinating story on dreams, passion, and your Hong Kong story.